So in 1840, I'm kind of like fast forwarding through part of the 1830s. I'd actually touch on this at the end of the Jackson lecture. So you have Jackson coming in winning the 1828 election, wins again in 1832. Martin Van Buren comes in 1836. And so when you have re-election in 1840, you have people that, without the personality of Andrew Jackson, which, you know, befuddles me, right? I don't understand what had made him. I mean, I do, I guess, intellectually, I understand his appeal to the common man. I understand kind of the I don't know, party atmosphere of politics in the 1830s and 40s. So I kind of get it, I guess, except that everything Jackson does just doesn't make any sense to me. Like policy wise, none of it's very smart, in my opinion. And so Andrew Jackson, when his personality is not there to drive the election, and of course, notice he keeps to the two-term tradition. He did not have to do that. So for all of that, the party, the Whigs, kind of this party that emerges in opposition to Andrew Jackson, for all that they call him King Andrew, which is the whole meaning of the term Whigs, right? For all that they say that, Andrew Jackson does step down. He could have gone ahead and run in 1840, but he doesn't. Of course, he's getting older, too. And Martin Van Buren was not particularly popular, even though he was kind of Jackson's chosen successor. He struggles to kind of, first off, struggles with an economy that Andrew Jackson killed, right? And it's because of Andrew Jackson and the way he managed the Bank of the U.S. and the specie circular and all that kind of stuff that you've created this kind of economic disruption. And so Martin Van Buren and the Democrats kind of get blamed for all of that. And so what's going to happen is that the Whig Party that in 1836 had not quite solidified and really come up with an identity, by 1840 they have. And by 1840, you have kind of these Whigs that are people that are either opposed to the Democrats because of the slavery issue, because of the agricultural issue, because they support a market economy, a strong bank, and tariffs and all that kind of stuff. Or you have people that just despise Jackson and are just fed up with Jackson, even if their attitude is a little more towards his kind of agricultural economy. So the Whigs by 1840 have taken a page from the Democrat Republicans and Martin Van Buren, and Martin Van Buren doesn't have the personality to carry the election, and as a result, you're going to see the Whigs have success. Now, they pick William Henry Harrison, who fought in the Battle of Tippecanoe, fought against the Indians, if you think back to right before the War of 1812, and I kind of had that mention about the Chief Little Turtle and stuff. That was William Henry Harrison who fights in that conflict. So by 1840, he is an old man, okay? This is an elderly gentleman. And he kind of comes in. He is your classic Whig Federalist, pro-market economy. Now, he's from Virginia. Okay, so this is not somebody who's like a Bostonian or whatever. This is a Virginian that kind of recognizes that the market economy and the strong bank system and all this kind of stuff, that it creates economic stability. So you have these people in the Whig Party that have looked at Jackson and the Democrat Republic and what Jackson has done to the Democrat Republicans. And they say, okay, this has created too much instability economically. So William Henry Harrison is a part of that, but he's also a part that kind of appeals to the North, right? John Tyler, on the other hand, is much more of your deep South slave owner, cotton economy, much more hardcore, more of a true. He's in the Whig Party because he doesn't fit in with Jackson, doesn't get along with Jackson. But in other ways, he's probably much more along this. He's kind of a hybrid of maybe John C. Calhoun and some other people as far as his attitudes, right? So pro-slavery, pro-expansion. Big pro-expansion, actually, and that kind of thing. And he comes in and wins Harrison and Tyler, it's Tippecanoe and Tyler too, take over in 1840. And, because Martin Van Buren's irritated everyone. But William Henry Harrison gives this big, long inauguration speech, right? And has pneumonia. Now, remember, I said he was an old man, right? So he dies 3 weeks after taking the oath of office, which leaves John Tyler to take over. Now, this is notable from one case in that this is the first time you have the death of a president in office, and that we have this like peaceful transfer of power from the president to the vice president. So it's notable in that sense, and that the system again, and I can't emphasize this enough. I mean, we saw this with the election of 1800, but we see it again in 1840. That the system is strong enough to withstand these kind of that in other countries would create massive disruptions. Right? In other countries, the death of a president 3 weeks after he won would be, a mess. But not in the United States, right? So Tyler comes in, which is unique. But here's the problem with John Tyler. John Tyler is a Whig, Henry Clay, John C. Calhoun, all that kind of stuff. But John Tyler is also kind of a Jackson wannabe. In other words, remember, he didn't get along with Jackson. Why doesn't he get along with Jackson? Probably because he was a little too much like Jackson. So he doesn't let the Whig Party kind of dictate the system to him. And as a result, he and Jackson, or he and the Whigs, end up not seeing eye to eye, particularly Henry Clay. So this all comes into this whole situation with Texas, right? Again, kind of quick review. Mexican independence begins in 1821. And so in 1821, you have Mexico now being its own country. They have a constitutional monarchy. This constitutional monarchy wants people to come into Texas so that they can settle it. There's not enough people to settle the Texas area. Texas is kind of under pressure from Native American groups, particularly the Comanche. And there's kind of a whole nother subset of history to that. I heard I just talked about this on Saturday at my conference. But so you have the Comanche putting pressure. You have the Mexicans kind of inviting Americans in to kind of help settle the area. Create settlement, help push Native Americans out, all this kind of develop the land, all those classic reasons why people settle someplace. So they invite Americans to come in. The Americans that come in most notably are going to be Southerners. Now, why is that? Okay. Panic of 1819 had created problems, had created a distrust of the market economy. People that are not sure that this democratic system is working, that they feel like maybe they're being cut out of the system, cut out of access to power. And so they see it as being somewhat corrupted. And so they want to go somewhere else. And so the land pressures, the inflated land prices, and remember, none of that gets better under Jackson. So the Panic of 1819 creates this economic crisis that then Jackson overreacts to. And when Jackson overreacts to it, he kills the bank. And the specie circular happens. And that only makes land prices more vulnerable. That only makes cotton prices more vulnerable. So again, you're going to attract these people that are interested in the private wealth of cotton production. And they're going to be attracted to Texas, especially East Texas, which has a whole lot more in common with, say, Louisiana and Arkansas than it does with the western part of the state. So understand that one of the factors for the Southerners being attracted to Texas, first and foremost, has to do with the actual geographic diversity of Texas. And I think that's important for you to recognize. So Southerners start coming in. Technically, they're not supposed to have slaves, but they kind of fudge the system by saying that they're indentured servants and that kind of thing. And so they bring their slaves with them. And Mexico kind of goes through a series of changes. They have some political disruption from a constitutional monarchy to a republican system that encourages a great deal of local control. Until, of course, Mexico realizes that, wait a minute, we have a lot of Anglos in Texas. How did this happen? And they start traveling up there. They send kind of a representative. And what he discovers is that there's a lot of illegal immigration. So the people that, the Stephen F. Austins and the original 300 that came into Texas typically signed agreements that said they would adhere to Catholicism, that they wouldn't have slaves, so forth and so on. And yes, do they bend the rules? Of course they do. But they at least officially attempt some assimilation. They understand that Spanish is the language and all this kind of stuff, and they assimilate. Well, fast forward to like the 1830s, and you've had a lot of people coming in that have no interest in assimilation. They're here illegally. They don't feel the need to learn the language. They don't feel the need to convert to Catholicism. They're just not remotely concerned about any of this. And so I think it's kind of important for you to recognize that this is kind of the scenario that's going to lead to some of the disruption in Texas. So they come in, they recognize they've got illegal immigration. We've got too many Anglos. this is creating a problem. And so the Mexican government pushes back and restricts immigration. We need to really shut down that immigration. We need to go after illegal immigrants, which is ironic, right? And they start doing that. In the meantime, you have some other political upheaval. This is going to cause Santa Anna to come to power. He's going to put down kind of some revolts in some of the other provinces of Mexico pretty harshly. Texas is at the bottom of the list because here's the thing. Texas is not a big threat. Texas doesn't have enough manpower. So as you start to have this concern about Texas, and Texas begins to be concerned about Santa Anna and kind of taking away power, the clamp down on illegal immigration. As this is taking place, right, they start inviting people to come into Texas to fight. So in 1836, when they declare independence, they have to reach out to other Americans because there is no way they're going to be able to fight Santa Anna. So this is kind of the interesting part, right? So you have this transition in immigration into Texas that goes from people that are initially here to escape what they see as a corrupt American system that are willing to assimilate to people that are here for private wealth, to gain opportunity. They want to come here. They want to grow cotton. They want to engage in a market economy with the United States, not with Mexico. This isn't about making Mexico better. This is about basically making your own money and being able to buy what you want from the United States and sell your cotton to the United States, which is not anything what Mexico had envisioned when they first invited Americans in. So in 1836, when the Tejanos declare independence, they're doing so realizing that they're running a big risk because the Santa Anna's army is incredibly strong. So they're going to have to get some assistance in order to make this thing happen. So this is where you get people like Davy Crockett coming in, and this is where you end up with kind of the Alamo. So Texas wins its independence and spends about 10 years kind of in limbo, right? The intent, and I won't go into the whole part of the Texas Revolution, but they get their independence after San Jacinto. Now, again, there's some debate. How much independence did they get? Was the independence approved by Mexican government? What were the borders of this independent nation? There's lots of question marks around this. Understand that the majority of Tejanos at this point want Texas to become a part of the United States. Now, not all. I'm not going to say all. You have Mirabeau B. Lamar, and you have some of the Mexican Tejanos who actually, ironically, many of them end up leaving Texas because of the racism that exists in Texas, right? A lot of anti-Mexican bias and that kind of thing. So most of the Texans want to become a part of the United States. John Tyler, who has alienated his own party, largely been a lame duck president because Henry Clay is not working with him, Daniel Webster, those people. And so he wants to run in 1844. So he comes in 1844 and thinks, hey, how can I possibly sell myself to the American people in a way that, the criticism of Henry Clay in Congress doesn't matter. So what he tries to do is he wants for Texas to become a state, okay? And so he kind of makes this appeal at the Whig convention, okay? And basically he doesn't get the nomination. But because he raises the issue of Texas, should we annex Texas, that kind of thing, and him trying to solidify his bid outside of Henry Clay, this is going to make it an election issue. As a result, James Polk is going to be the Democratic candidate. So he's going to kind of take over for the Democrat Republicans. Of course, now they're just being called Democrats, and the Van Buren wing and stuff. And so Polk is going to be very much this expansionist, pro-agriculture, and all that kind of stuff. So he's going to come in, and he is, so Polk is going to advocate for Texas coming in as a slave state since there's already slaves here, and he wants to claim Oregon as a free state. Henry Clay, who is running for the Whig Party, finally gets his chance to run for the presidency, starts off opposing Texas annexation simply because of the slavery issue, flip-flops, and you've got too many people too many Whigs that are anti-slavery. You've got too many people that are excited by Polk's assertion about Western expansion. So Polk will win the election in 1844. The issue of Texas annexation was a political issue. It's going to happen. But Tyler, in a last-ditch push to kind of get his names in the history books, annexes Texas by congressional resolution. What this is basically the Texas Congress says, yes, we resolve that we want to be a part of the U.S., and Tyler says, yeah, I approve this message, and that's how Texas becomes a part of the U.S. So Texas does have a unique statehood story that's different than others. So I think it's very interesting for you to kind of understand